Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to our program. Now on to our headlines.
President-elect Joe Biden introduces a slate of veteran diplomats and policymakers who will make up his national security and foreign policy team, saying America is back, ready to lead the world.
And our people safe and secure.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi visits Japan for the first time since the coronavirus pandemic began and meets with his Japanese counterpart as Tokyo and Beijing pledge to cooperate on trade and defense but lock horns on disputed islands. Airline revenues this year will plunge by 60% as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, which threatens the survival of the industry, according to the International Air Transport Association, or IATA. Finally, the Church of Christ in the United Kingdom donates to local food banks.
First, in the U.S., President-elect Joe Biden has formally introduced his national security team to the nation. And it came as the presidential transition officially got underway after a 3-week delay. America is back, that's the message President Joe Biden and his first 6 cabinet members hammered home in Wilmington, Delaware. As he took to the stage, Mr. Biden declared a break from the last 4 years. Take a look.
Today, I'm pleased to announce nominations and staff for critical foreign policy and national security positions in my administration. It's a team that will keep our country and our people safe and secure. And it's a team that reflects the fact that America is back, ready to lead the world, not retreat from it. Once again, sit at the head of the table. The team meets this moment, this team behind me. They embody my core beliefs that America is strongest when it works with its allies. Collectively, this team has secured some of the most defining national security and diplomatic achievements in recent memory, made possible through decades of experience working with our partners. That's how we truly keep America safe.
I will never forget that my role on this team is unique. Better than that of a policy advisor, I will represent to you Congress, and the American public, the patriots who comprise our intelligence community. Mr. President-elect, you know that I have never shied away from speaking truth to power, and that will be my charge as Director of National Intelligence.
The words on behalf of the United States of America meant everything to me and to my parents, whom I think of today and every day. My father and mother brought me to this country to escape communism. They cherished our democracy and were intensely proud to become United States citizens, as was I.
Thank you, folks.
I want to say to you, America is back. Multilateralism is back. Diplomacy is back.
And they also share something else in common: an unwavering belief in America's ideals, an unshakable commitment to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law.
Meanwhile, former Secretary of State John Kerry, who Biden chose as his special envoy on climate change, confirmed the new administration would bring the U.S. back into the Paris Climate Accord after Trump pulled out of the landmark 2015 deal. But Kerry also warned that the Paris Pact he helped negotiate was not enough to fight global warming. Let's listen in.
To end this crisis, the whole world must come together. You're right to rejoin Paris on day one. And you're right to recognize that Paris alone is not enough. At the global meeting in Glasgow 1 year from now, all nations must raise ambition together, or we will all fail together.
All of this on the day after Emily Murphy, head of the General Services Administration, officially answered that Mr. Joe Biden is president-elect. That move officially authorized the transition to begin. President Trump suggested that the move was in the country's best interest. He also fired off another tweet saying, quote, "Remember, the GSA has been terrific and Emily Murphy has done a great job, but the GSA does not determine who the next president of the United States will be." President Trump did find time to host the annual White House turkey pardon on Tuesday, sparing a farm bird from the Thanksgiving table and maybe previewing pardons for some of his human friends. At the press briefing, meanwhile, that lasted slightly longer than 1 minute and announced within minutes of taking place, President Trump praised his administration after the Dow surge passed 30,000 points for the first time. But Trump didn't offer a concession nor take questions from reporters the day after he authorized a transition to the Biden administration. Take a look.
The stock market, Dow Jones Industrial Average, just hit 30,000, which is the highest in history. We've never broken 30,000, and that's just despite everything that's taken place with the pandemic. I'm very thrilled with what's happened on the vaccine front. That's been absolutely incredible. It's nothing like that has ever happened medically, and I think people are acknowledging that, and it's having a big effect. But the stock market's just broken 30,000. Never been broken, that number. That's a sacred number, 30,000. Nobody thought they'd ever see it. That's the 9th time since the beginning of 2020, and it's the 48th time that we've broken records during the Trump administration. And I just want to congratulate all the people within the administration that work so hard. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the people of our country, because there are no people like you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. President, even if you're sir, why not concede for the
Experts urged Americans against traveling for family gatherings at Thanksgiving this week, even though millions were set to defy the advice as the U.S. crossed the threshold of more than 12 million cases of coronavirus. This weekend, past images on social media of crowded airports in Chicago and Phoenix fueled concerns about whether Americans were taking the warning seriously enough. Watch this.
I've been gone since August. So I'm actually coming home this time. I decided this back in October of last year before COVID hit. So I'm currently pursuing a contract in the U.S. Air Force to commission as an officer and hopefully become a pilot. I just wanted to come home, come see the family, come see my girl again.
Really, because I know people are still traveling. So I wasn't really too concerned. I just made sure like I had hand sanitizer just to protect myself.
If you have people in your family who are elderly or who have underlying conditions that make them susceptible to severe outcome, you've got to make a decision. Do you want people to travel, to spend time in a crowded airport, to get on a plane and maybe not have time for quarantining after they get here, or not have the ability or understanding how they can get a test quickly enough? You may want to make a decision that you're just going to forestall it. Now, whenever I say that, I'm the Grinch that stole Thanksgiving. I'm not saying that. I'm saying everyone needs to seriously think about the risk-benefit. And you might say, I had a wonderful I had a wonderful Thanksgiving last year. I'm looking forward to a wonderful Thanksgiving next year. But maybe right now's not the time to have 25 people in a house when you take your mask off as you're eating.
Even with minimal celebrations resulting in significantly smaller turkey orders this year, according to breeders, officials fear an explosion of cases in the run-up to the holidays. Since the start of the pandemic in March, holidays have triggered outbreaks of the virus, including after July 4th, Labor Day in September, and October 31st holiday, according to health officials. For Thanksgiving, the first holiday of the winter period, the risk is even greater because thousands of students will return home and often stay there until January.
And a restaurant dining ban in Los Angeles was due to come into force Wednesday, U.S. time, as officials warned Americans to stay home for the Thanksgiving holiday, while parts of Europe eyed looser lockdowns over the festive season. The three-week order in America's second biggest city will begin as California faces record COVID-19 cases, and its health secretary urges people to avoid large family gatherings. With the U.S. confronted by soaring numbers of deaths and new cases, plans to deliver a vaccine to Americans are accelerating. More than 6 million doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine will be available in the first week after it's cleared for emergency use, which is likely next month, and 40 million by the end of December, according to officials. There were more than 86,000 coronavirus hospitalizations in the U.S. on Tuesday, a record, as well as 167,000 new cases and more than 2,000 deaths.
As America grappled with its crisis, European nations were slowly relaxing measures ahead of their own Christmas holidays as a second wave of infections slowed the following weeks of lockdowns. In a televised address late Tuesday, French President Emmanuel Macron announced shops could reopen on Saturday and nationwide stay-at-home orders would be lifted from December 15. The current lockdown in force since the end of October will be replaced by a countrywide curfew from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. starting December 15, except on December 24th and 31st, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. French people should, however, avoid pointless travel, the president said. Starting on Saturday and pending the December 15 end to the lockdown, people will be allowed to move freely in a radius of 20 kilometers around their homes for up to 3 hours a day, compared to 1 kilometer for up to 1 hour now. Cinemas, theaters, and museums will be allowed to reopen on December 15. But restaurants, as well as high schools, will have to wait until January 20 to reopen, and only on condition that daily new virus cases drop below 5,000. The president gave no target date for any reopening of bars, cafes, or nightclubs. France's 350 ski resorts, among the most popular in Europe, will not be allowed to reopen in time for the year-end holiday season. Macron also said that he hoped that the first COVID vaccines would be available for use by the end of December or in early January. He vowed that vaccines would be made available to high-risk populations first and will not be made mandatory.
Meanwhile, British authorities are also announcing restrictions on social mixing, and travel would be eased across the UK over the holidays. Joining us live from the United Kingdom is Graham Thomas. Hello, Graham.
Good evening, Alma.
Good evening.
You're right. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Monday said the escape route from the coronavirus was in sight, as he announced that the tougher restrictions in England would not be extended beyond December the 2nd. The breakthroughs in treatment and in testing vaccines mean that the scientific cavalry is now in sight, he told the Parliament. We know in our hearts that next year we will succeed. By the spring, these advances should reduce the need for restrictions that we've endured in 2020. We've turned a corner and the escape route is in sight, he said, while warning that the holiday season will not be normal and there's a long road to spring. Johnson announced that England would re-enter a tiered system of toughened regional systems and restrictions when the current lockdown expires on December the 2nd, bolstered by major testing programs in areas with the highest rates. The easing of restrictions will see people permitted to leave their homes for any purpose, with public religious ceremonies and certain leisure activities once again allowed. Up to 4,000 spectators will be able to return to sports stadiums and live performances in low-risk parts of England, although pubs can only reopen if they are not in the highest tier. The Prime Minister also announced a time-limited dispensation for families to gather for the year-end holiday period. What we don't want is to throw caution to the wind and allow the virus to flare up again, he added. Families will need to make a careful judgment about risk of visiting older relatives. The Prime Minister's short-term plan resolves following atrocity in Liverpool, which the government said had led to a substantial fall in cases. The system is now being piloted in the state-run National Health Service, or NHS, and in care homes, which it is hoped would allow residents to meet with visitors once again. If successful, it will be extended nationwide and to the general population, he announced. Back to you, Alma.
Okay, so we're hearing a lot in the news about families, in some cases not having seen their relatives in care homes since March this year. Do you think these rapid tests could help relatives meet up again?
According to the latest news, immunizations in care homes for residents and staff could start as early as next week, which will mean staff and residents having protection from the coronavirus up to 90%. And with the intention of rapid testing for visitors, this could mean that by the end of the year, the restrictions we have seen could be relaxed, meaning one-to-one visits could recommence once again. However, a caution, there is still a long way to go. And in my opinion, the target of spring next year is still a little optimistic at this stage. But we'll wait and see. Back to you, Alma.
All right, we'll wait and see. Thank you very much, Graham, for your update there in the United Kingdom. You take care. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Alma. This is Graham Thomas for EBC on the United Kingdom. We live in interesting times.
Elsewhere in Europe, 16 German states agreed to slightly loosen limits on social contact over the holidays, according to a draft deal seen by AFP, even as cases near 1 million there. State leaders agreed to cap gatherings to 10 people over the December 23 to January 1 holiday, double the limit for the rest of December. The draft also called for talks with religious communities on measures to reduce contacts at religious services and other religious gatherings. The measures mark a compromise on the politically charged issue, with some less affected regions calling for lighter restrictions. The new measures, which foresee an extension for closures of restaurants, bars, and cultural venues, also include recommendations against using fireworks on busy streets and squares in order to prevent group gatherings.
And we'll look at this intensive care unit at the Policlinico Tor Vergata Hospital. It's full as Italy, the first European country to be hit by the global coronavirus pandemic, passes the threshold of 50,000 deaths from COVID-19. Take a look.
In questo momento la nostra capienza è di 9 posti letto in questa sezione di terapia intensiva, purtroppo i posti sono sempre pieni, c'è un turnover molto ampio perché in questa fase c'è una mortalità sicuramente elevata e stiamo riscontrando la stessa condizione in cui ci trovavamo proprio nei primi mesi della pandemia. I tempi di permanenza in questo momento sono molto bassi, nel senso che un paziente sta una media di 7-8 giorni, perché purtroppo la mortalità dall'inizio di novembre è salita. In questo momento è una mortalità almeno più del 50% dei pazienti che sono venuti da noi, una mortalità che riguarda in questo momento esclusivamente pazienti di sesso maschile con un'età media di 72 anni.
Meanwhile, here are some images from a COVID-19 intensive care unit in New Delhi, where hospital beds are becoming scarce with the rise in virus cases. Delhi is bursting beyond its seams, warns a doctor treating patients there. India is the second worst infected nation after the United States, with more than 9.1 million virus cases. Watch this.
Delhi is, I'll say, bursting beyond its seams. Still, we are having to refuse patients because we have no place. And we are only able to admit patients after discharges on a particular day. So we are actually hand to mouth. It's still on a rising trend. So where it stops, I don't know. Because I don't think we as a city have behaved responsibly. The moment we opened, we thought the world is one. We started partying around, we stopped social distancing, we were not wearing masks, we were not performing hand hygiene. The markets were open, they were flooded. Unfortunately, there was a festive season where people flouted all norms. If somebody is doing 6 to 8 hours shifts, he is working actually more than 18 to 20 hours equivalent work to people who are not with PPs. So it's a huge, huge drain on them.
We'll take a short break. Eagle News will be right back.
Portion is brought to you by RJK Services Manpower Agency Corporation.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
In Australia, the country's most populous state, New South Wales, eased social distancing measures and allowed companies to bring employees back to work. That's according to Premier Gladys Berejiklian. She announced this on Wednesday after 3 weeks without a locally transmitted COVID-19 case. Take a look.
Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to say that again overnight there was no community transmission in New South Wales, which is extremely pleasing. I'm also very pleased to confirm today that a number of restrictions will be eased. In fact, my colleagues and I, in conjunction with the health experts, were able to go a bit further than what we anticipated this morning, which is fantastic news. So it means that if you're hosting an event at your home, you can have up to 50 people so long as you utilise an outdoor space. If you don't have an outdoor space, we don't recommend any more than 30 people inside the home. But if you have a backyard or an outdoor space you can utilise, you're able to have up to 50 people. We're pleased to say that from the 14th of December, we will be removing the health order which talks about working from home. We'll be staying silent on that. What that means is that private companies and organisations can make decisions about what they do with their employees into the new year. We want to give people time to think about this, and that's why I'm pleased to say Minister Constance is here, because removing that health order and allowing companies to consider their options also means that we need to consider what this means for our transport network and our mass transport network.
Australia's second most populous state, Victoria, also recorded no cases of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. Victoria State, where 90% of the country's deaths related to the virus have occurred, has now gone 25 consecutive days without any infections recorded. With Victoria having got its second wave outbreak contained, Queensland will open its border to the state on December 1st.
Tokyo's governor on Wednesday urged residents to avoid non-essential outings and asked businesses serving alcohol to shut early as Japan battles record coronavirus infections. The country has seen a comparatively small outbreak overall, with just over 2,000 deaths and 135,400 confirmed cases, and has not imposed the strict lockdown seen elsewhere. But it is now battling a third wave of the respiratory disease, reporting record numbers of daily infections nationwide in recent days. Neither of the governor's new calls will carry any enforcement mechanism. Even a state of emergency declared in the spring during a spike in infections did not carry punishments for those who defied advice to stay home or shutter their businesses. In addition, Koike asked businesses serving alcohol, including karaoke parlors, to close at 10 p.m. starting from Saturday for approximately 3 weeks. Businesses complying will be eligible for compensation. Koike's announcement came as the Japan Medical Association warned that medical provision systems across Japan are squarely facing the danger of collapse.
Malacanang on Tuesday warned Changuez or bazaar operators of possible closure if they fail to observe minimum health and safety standards to prevent the spread of the coronavirus disease. In a palace press briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque issued a reminder as more people are expected to flock to Changuez during the holiday season. Let's listen in.
Pwede po, kung maalala nyo, nung tayo po'y unang-unang nagluwag, talagang dinagsaan ng tao mga malls at merong mga malls na sinarado po ng mga lokal na pamahalaan. So i-remind ko lang po mga Changi operators po, pwede po kayo mapasara kapag hindi nyo po inobserve ang social distancing. Po pwede naman pong limitahan yung mga pumapasok sa mga Changi, kinakailangan lang magkaroon ng special entry at exit points. Pag hindi po kayo nag-control ng crowd, baka mapasara kayo, lalo kayo mawala ng negosyo.
He also reminded them to ensure that only a limited number of shoppers inside their stores and that there are designated entry and exit points for shoppers. The secretary also urged local government units to do their part in monitoring Changuez to prevent people from gathering in one area.
12 Thai pro-democracy protest leaders have been summoned by police to answer charges of royal defamation, the first use of the draconian law in almost 3 years, as Bangkok gears up for another major rally. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha last week gave the green light for authorities to lay lèse-majesty charges, which bar any criticism of the royal family against demonstrators who could now face up to 15 years in prison. Thailand has for months been rocked by youth-led protests demanding a new constitution, reform of the untouchable monarchy, and for Prayut to resign. Tensions in the Thai capital are rising. Officers deployed water cannon and tear gas at a rally outside Parliament last week, with 55 people injured and 6 shot in scuffles with royalists. The source of the gunfire is under investigation. Anti-royal graffiti was also daubed around police headquarters in central Bangkok, and demonstrators threw paint at the compound. Thailand has one of the harshest royal defamation laws in the world. It is routinely interpreted to include any criticism of the monarchy, including content posted or shared on social media.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong's leader Carrie Lam vowed to restore order to the city's legislature and save its political system from chaos in a key policy speech at a muted gathering of almost exclusively pro-Beijing lawmakers. Lam's annual policy address to the Legislative Council outlines the administration's plans for the city. Lam said her government would introduce bills to enhance the oath-taking by civil servants and to enhance the electoral system, though details were unclear. Media reports had suggested that the government might expand voting for Hong Kongers in mainland China, a controversial move criticized by the opposition, although Lam didn't offer details on the plans. Lam, the city's least popular leader since the handover, presented her annual policy address via video last year, after some opposition lawmakers disrupted the legislative session, jeering as she started her speech. Now, she did not face any opposition this year. The address was delivered at the Legislative Council chamber with no attendance from pro-democracy lawmakers, all of whom have tendered their resignation earlier this month after the ousting of 4 of their colleagues by pro-Beijing authorities.
The United States on Monday donated $18 million worth of precision-guided munitions to the Philippines, which would be used by the government in counterterrorism operations. U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien is in Manila as part of a Southeast Asia tour that also included Vietnam. He said the transfer underscores the U.S. government's strong and enduring commitment to the critical alliance of the U.S. and the Philippines. Watch this.
So today, on behalf of President Trump, and it's an honor for me to be here because I was on the initial phone call between President Trump and President Duterte when they spoke about the fight against terrorism that the Philippines is so valiantly waging and the need for some munitions. I'm pleased to transfer a package of precision-guided missiles, munitions, including 100 TOW 2 Alpha missiles, 12 ITAS, and 24 MK-82s to the Armed Forces of the Philippines. And Mr. Secretary, let me just hand you a letter on behalf of this transfer underscores our strong and enduring commitment to a critical alliance. We hope these precision-guided missiles and munitions will help the AFP protect Philippine lives in Mindanao and end the needless suffering imposed by ISIS East Asia. The United States has been at the forefront of the fight against ISIS. The United States in the Middle East has destroyed 100% of the physical caliphate. That was a caliphate the size of Great Britain, extending across Syria and Iraq. It was destroyed under President Trump's orders. Further, President Trump gave the orders for a daring nighttime raid that led to justice being brought to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the founder and leader of ISIS. Now President Trump is standing with President Duterte as we combat ISIS here in Southeast Asia.
DFA Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. received the donation on behalf of the Philippine government and said the smart bombs would boost the capability of the AFP in neutralizing identified or specific threats to national security, particularly in counterterrorism operations.
On behalf of the Philippine government, the donation by the United States government of precision-guided munitions, or PGMs, valued at approximately $18 million. This is the fulfillment of a promise made by U.S. President Donald J. Trump to President Duterte during their phone call in April. We look forward to training on the use of these weapons with the best and undisputed military power in the world, and the only one in history selflessly dedicated to the freedom and independence of other countries wherever threatened in the world. These smart bombs will boost the capability of our armed forces in neutralizing identified or specific threats to national security, particularly in counter-terrorism operations. In spite of the challenges we face due to the pandemic that has spread like wildfire around the world, the Philippines remains stability for both our countries and the greater region. It is demonstrative of President Trump's staunch support for the Philippines to counter both internal and external security threats, and emblematic of our two leaders' trust in each other. On behalf of my President and the government of the Philippines, President Trump, friends in the U.S. government, thank you very much. God save America. God save the Philippines.
Thank you, Secretary Locsin.